Welcome to Gungnir Strategic. In this video, we'll cover the basics of splitting procedures when working a threshold during deliberate CQB. Splitting a door involves positioning the working element on both sides of the door or door frame, effectively splitting the element. This method allows two teammates to work the door simultaneously, also known as dual stacking or double stacking. Before we dive into the procedures, let's define some key terms and the roles of those conducting the split. The men executing the split will be referred to as the number one man and the number two man. The number one man is positioned on the strong side of the door, typically the hinge side for an inward opening door. He's called the number one man because he'll be the first exposed to the room once the door is breached, and will generally lead the entry, barring any other factors that may alter SOP. His main responsibilities are maintaining security over the door and signaling the number two man to open the door when ready. The number two man stands on the weak side of the door, usually the handle side for an inward opening door. He's called the number two man because he won't be immediately exposed to the room when the door opens and typically follows the number one man during the entry. The number two man has several key responsibilities. First, he must perform a 360-degree check to ensure no teammates are improperly positioned, which could lead to dangerous exposure once the door is breached. Second, he's responsible for a doorframe check if the context requires it. Finally, he opens the door when signaled by the number one man. Basic splitting procedures. Once the split is established, the number one man maintains security over the door, while the number two man completes his 360-degree check and any necessary doorframe checks. When ready, the number two man positions himself to open the door and waits for the number one man's signal. Once signaled, the number two man opens the door and immediately bails away from the doorframe, moving toward the narrow angle while regaining control of his weapon. Slicing the room. After the door is opened, the number two man stays between his narrow angle and the 45-degree angle, while the number one man slices out to his 90-degree angle. Once the number one man reaches the 90-degree angle, he collapses back to the narrow angle to dig the corner and stage for entry. As the number one man collapses, the number two man slices out to his 90-degree angle. After hitting the 90-degree angle, he too collapses back to the narrow angle, digs his corner, and stages for entry. Making entry. By default, the number one man will be the first to enter the room, with the number two man quickly following. The number two man will check his muzzle, either up or down, to allow the number one man to make entry. Splitting corner-fed rooms. The procedure for splitting a corner-fed room is similar, with one key difference. In most cases, the door swings toward the shallow side, meaning the number two man will be on the positive side and can quickly identify the room as corner-fed, while the number one man faces the negative side. Depending on the depth of the shallow side corner, the number one man may not be able to identify the room as corner-fed at the 90-degree angle. It's crucial that the number two man still slices out his angles of responsibility to the 90-degree, as there could be additional threats like open doors or dead space along that wall. The minor adjustment for corner-fed rooms is that once the number two man reaches the 90-degree angle, he can check his muzzle at the 90-degree. This nonverbal cue signals to the number one man that the room is corner-fed and that the opposing corner is a non-factor. This information may influence how the number one man chooses to enter and engage the deep corner. This was a basic 30,000-foot overview of splitting procedures. Specifics, nuances, and contingencies of splitting will be covered in future videos. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy this content, be sure to like and subscribe. Consider joining my Patreon for early access to videos and exclusive content. The link is in the description below.